Hello, and welcome to a world of gentle bedtime stories. In just a moment, you'll be invited into a calm and magical tale created to help your body rest and your imagination begin a soft nighttime journey. Get comfortable, lie down under your cozy blanket. Take a slow, peaceful breath and allow this story to guide you gently towards sleep. This is the story of Elliot, a boy who discovered that dreams can be the most wonderful kind of play. In a warm, cozy apartment where the evening smelled of raspberry tea and the silence carried a soft, friendly sound, there lived a boy named Elliot. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel empty at all, more like a gentle pause, a quiet moment that wrapped itself around the rooms like a blanket. Elliot was 7 years old. He had bright eyes filled with ideas and an imagination that very rarely decided to rest first. Even when his body slowed down, his thoughts liked to keep moving, hopping from one idea to the next, always curious, always ready for something new. More than anything in the world, Elliot loved to play. Not with one specific toy, not with one particular game. He loved play itself. He loved that magical moment when something ordinary suddenly became something else entirely. When the world changed shape just because he imagined it differently. A chair could turn into a ship sailing across a wide ocean. A pillow could become a tall mountain with snowy peaks, and a few wooden blocks could grow into an entire city full of streets, towers, and secret places. That was why evenings were a little difficult for Elliot, because evening meant that the day was slowly coming to an end, and night meant sleep. And when you sleep, you can't play. At least, that's what Elliot believed. That evening, his room had transformed into a huge, lively city. It was no longer just a bedroom. It was something much bigger, something important. The carpet became the main city square, soft and wide, perfect for meetings and celebrations. Pillows stacked one on top of another turned into gentle hills and tall slopes. Wooden blocks rose into high towers, long bridges, and buildings with mysterious purposes that only Elliot truly understood. He moved carefully around the room, just like a real architect would. He watched every step, making sure not to destroy anything by accident. Each block had its own place. Every road led exactly where it was meant to go. Nothing was random. Everything belonged. The tallest tower reached almost all the way up to the bookshelf. Sitting right at the very top was Elliot's favorite stuffed animal, Teddy Bear. Today, Teddy was someone very important. "Mr. Mayor," Elliot whispered, kneeling on the carpet so he could be closer. "Is the city ready for the evening?" Teddy Bear sat perfectly still with a small stitched smile on his face. He looked calm, serious, and responsible, exactly the way the mayor of a well-run city should look. "Excellent," Elliot nodded, as if he had just received a very official answer. "In that case," he continued quietly, "I officially declare the Pillow Bridge open." A small toy car began to roll along the road, and Elliot made soft engine sounds under his breath. The game pulled him in completely. Time stopped mattering. Minutes no longer existed. The only thing that felt important was what was happening right now, right there on the carpet. That was when the door to the room opened gently, almost without a sound. Mom peeked inside. She was wearing a soft sweater, and her smile had that familiar warmth that always made Elliot feel calmer, as if everything in the world was exactly the way it was supposed to be. "Oh," she said quietly, looking around. "What a beautiful city. I see the mayor is keeping a close eye on everything." Elliot straightened up with pride. "That's Teddy Bear," he explained. "He knows all the rules, and he remembers where every street is." Mom sat down on the edge of the bed, careful not to move a single block. She looked at the city with curiosity, as if she were really visiting it, as if the carpet truly was a square and the blocks truly were towers. "You know what, explorer?" she said gently. "It's evening now. Time to start getting ready for bed." Elliot glanced at the clock. The hands looked suspicious, as if they had moved forward on purpose without asking him first. "But I'm not finished yet," he said calmly. "There's still so much to do here." Mom smiled, the kind of smile that didn't rush anything. "The city can stay right where it is," she said. "Blocks know how to wait. Tomorrow, everything will be exactly where it is now." Elliot looked at the tall tower again. It stood perfectly still. Not a single block shifted. It was almost as if the whole city had agreed to take a quiet break for the night. "Do you promise?" he asked. "I promise," Mom replied. "And Mayor Teddy can keep watch." Elliot leaned closer to the teddy bear at the top of the tower. "Night shift," he whispered seriously. "Watch over everything." A short while later, Elliot was already in the bathroom. He brushed his teeth slowly, watching the foam gather and grow. It reminded him of tiny clouds floating together. In the mirror, he saw his focused eyes staring back at him. even now, his imagination tried to come up with something new, but he let his thoughts drift calmly instead, like leaves floating on water. When he returned to his room, he was wearing pajamas covered in little stars. In the dim light, the stars seemed to glow softly, almost as if they were real. Mom tucked the blanket around him. "A bedtime story?" she asked. "Yes," Elliot replied. "A nice one." Mom began to read. Her voice was calm and steady, gently rocking the air in the room. Elliot could see everything she was reading about inside his mind, clear and colorful. His eyelids started to feel heavy, but he didn't want to fall asleep just yet. "Mom," he whispered, "can you do different things in dreams?" Mom closed the book and looked at him. "In dreams, imagination can do a great many things," she said. "Sometimes it shows us things we could never plan while we're awake." Elliot thought about that for a moment. "I don't really like sleeping," he admitted quietly. "When I sleep, I can't play." Mom gently stroked his hair. "Your thoughts don't disappear," she said softly. "They simply travel in different ways." She kissed his forehead, turned off the main light, and left only a small moon-shaped lamp glowing gently in the room. "Good night, Elliot," she whispered and stepped out. The door closed quietly behind her. Elliot was alone. He lay there for a while in silence. The blanket felt soft and warm, and the lamp shone gently nearby. He closed his eyes and tried to fall asleep, but his thoughts began to wander. One about blocks, one about toy cars, one about tomorrow. He felt a light sense of boredom, not a sad kind, just the kind that softly suggests, maybe you could think of something. "I can't get up," he thought. "Mom asked me to go to sleep, but I can still think." He tried counting. He tried breathing more slowly. He tried imagining silence. And then a thought appeared. Simple, clear. What if I made up my own dream? Elliot smiled softly to himself. "I'll design a dream," he thought. "One where anything is possible. One that is exactly the way I want it to be." He closed his eyes. He breathed calmly. Images began to appear. Stars, space, colors. And that was the moment when his nighttime dream adventure truly began. Elliot didn't notice the exact moment when the boundary between thought and sleep began to fade. There was no clear, "Now I'm falling asleep." There was no sudden silence, no instant darkness. Instead, the images in his mind simply became clearer, softer, as if someone had gently dimmed the light of the day and quietly turned on the light of dreaming. At first, he felt incredibly light, so light that it seemed as though the blanket was no longer touching him at all, as if the bed had disappeared beneath him, and he was floating in the air, calm, peaceful, without even a trace of fear. When he opened his eyes, or rather his dream eyes, the kind that see the world a little differently, he saw a sky above him. But this was not an ordinary sky. It was vast, deep blue, filled with stars that shimmered and twinkled as if they were blinking at him knowingly. "Oh," Elliot whispered in awe, "this must be space." And it truly was. All around him stretched a wide, peaceful expanse. There was no cold here, and no frightening silence. Instead, the space felt soft, warm, and welcoming, almost as if the universe itself knew that this was a child's dream and wanted him to feel safe. Elliot looked down, and that was when he realized he was flying. He wasn't falling. He wasn't flailing his arms in panic. He was simply drifting, as if the air were water, and he instinctively knew exactly how to move through it. "It works," he said with delight. "It really works." He stretched his arms wide and made a gentle turn. The stars spun along with him, forming a glowing spiral of light. Elliot laughed softly, because laughter in space sounded like tiny bells chiming far away. Suddenly, something green flashed past him. "Hey!" Elliot called out. The green shape stopped and hovered in the air nearby. It was a small alien with a round head, long arms, and eyes that shone like two glowing drops of morning dew. "Oh, hi," the alien said cheerfully. "New here?" "I think so," Elliot replied. "This is my dream." "Awesome," the alien exclaimed. "Then you must want to play." Before Elliot could answer, several more aliens appeared around them. Each one was a different color: blue, purple, yellow, and even one covered in stripes. "We're playing tag," one of them shouted. "But space tag," another added. "What kind of tag?" Elliot asked, already smiling. "The kind where you can fly," explained one alien. "Slow down, speed up, and make loops in the air." Before Elliot even realized what was happening, one of the aliens gently tapped him on the shoulder with a finger. "You're it." And the game began. Elliot flew upward, then suddenly dove down, weaving between stars and hiding behind tiny planets. He burst into laughter whenever someone almost caught him, only for him to change direction at the very last second. There was no tiredness here, no heavy breathing, only the pure joy of movement. after a while, Elliot noticed something strange. Floating in front of him, completely out of place in space, was a tower made of blocks. "Hey," he said in surprise, "those are my blocks." The tower looked exactly like the one in his room, only bigger and softly glowing with gentle light. "That's your design," one of the aliens said. "In dreams, designs grow." Elliot floated closer and touched one of the blocks. It felt warm and smooth beneath his fingers, and when he placed his foot on the first level of the tower, something incredible happened. The tower began to expand. The blocks shifted on their own. They rearranged themselves, connected, and stretched outward, until suddenly it was no longer just a tower, but a vast structure filled with terraces, staircases, and bridges. "Wow," Elliot whispered. He ran up the stairs, and with every step, the world around him changed. When he reached the very top, he saw something astonishing before him. A city, but not an ordinary city. It was magical. The houses had rounded roofs. The windows glowed with warm light. The streets were soft, like carpet beneath his feet. Balloons floated gently above the rooftops, and pastel-colored clouds drifted slowly across the sky. "This is my city," Elliot said in wonder. He ran down from the tower and along the streets. Every step felt springy, as if the ground itself were gently bouncing him forward. In one of the squares stood a huge trampoline. "Oh, wow!" Elliot smiled. "This is new." He jumped once, a second time, higher, a third time, so high that he touched a cloud, and the cloud was sweet. "Cotton candy!" Elliot laughed, taking a bite. The cloud melted like sugar on his tongue, and right away a new one formed in its place. He bounced from the trampoline to the clouds, from one cloud to another, nibbling little pieces, laughing, and feeling that everything was exactly the way it was meant to be. At last, he sat down on one of the clouds. His legs dangled freely, and beneath him stretched the entire dream. Space, the city, the tower, and the aliens playing somewhere in the distance. Elliot sighed with contentment. "It's really nice here," he said softly. "Really nice." And then he felt something new. Not tiredness, but calm. A warm, gentle calm that seemed to whisper, "Everything is okay." He looked at the stars one more time. "I wonder what else I can come up with," he thought. And the dream, as if it had heard him, began to shift its colors ever so slightly, quietly preparing something new. And so Elliot drifted onward, deeper into his nighttime dream adventure. Elliot sat on the soft cloud for a little while longer. Looking out at the world, he had created himself. The distant space glowed calmly. The city made of blocks breathed with a quiet light, and the aliens were playing more slowly now, as if they too could feel that the dream was beginning to change its rhythm. There was no bell, no signal of any kind. Everything simply became gentler. The colors grew warmer, movements became slower. Even the air itself seemed to move more quietly, as if it didn't want to wake anyone. Elliot stretched softly and looked at his hands. That was really nice, he said to himself with a small smile. Really nice. And then he felt something new. Not tiredness, not boredom. Just a thought that appeared calmly, like a soft blanket slipping down over his shoulders. I'd like to lie down. Elliot looked around. Since this is my dream, he thought, I can imagine a place to rest too, but not an ordinary one. He slid gently off the cloud and drifted slowly over his dream. He passed above the city, above the tower, above the quiet expanse of space, until he reached a place where everything felt even more peaceful. There, in the very center of the dream, floated a large, glowing island. It wasn't made of stone or earth. It looked as if it were formed from soft light and silence itself. Perfect, Elliot whispered. He stepped onto the island and looked around carefully. Now, a bed, he said quietly, very seriously. And then something extraordinary began to happen. Tiny sparks of light appeared in the air. They drifted around Elliot slowly, without any hurry. The sparks joined into lines, the lines into shapes, and the shapes slowly began to resemble the frame of a bed. But this was not an ordinary bed. It was wide like a cloud, soft like the best pillow, and calm like a windless night. The mattress looked as though it had been woven from silence. The blanket was the color of the night sky, and tiny stars shimmered across it, just like the ones on Elliot's pajamas. Wow, he whispered. This is the best bed in the world. Beside the bed, a small lamp appeared. It was round and gentle, glowing with a warm, soft light, just like the one in his room, only this one belonged to the dream. Elliot climbed onto the bed and lay down comfortably. The mattress shaped itself perfectly to him, as if it had been waiting for him for a very long time. He looked up. There was no ceiling above the bed. There was a sky full of stars that moved very slowly, as if they were dancing a quiet, careful dance. I like dreams, Elliot whispered. They're like playing, only calmer. The blanket rose and fell with his breathing. The dream seemed to rock him gently, like a little boat floating on calm water. From far away, he heard the soft laughter of the aliens. But a moment later, everything grew quiet. One by one, the lights of the city dimmed. The tower of blocks stood still, as if it too were falling asleep with him. Elliot closed his eyes, but this time not because he wanted to imagine something new. He closed them because he felt comfortable, because he felt safe, because everything was just right. He was still dreaming, but this dream had become very simple now. No running, no flying, no jumping. It was like a soft melody that doesn't need words. And then the dream began to slowly dissolve. It didn't disappear all at once. It simply grew brighter. Elliot felt the bed beneath him begin to change. He felt the island of light becoming more familiar. He sensed the stars above him slowly fading. And then he heard a voice. Elliot. Soft, warm, very familiar. He opened his eyes. He was in his room, lying in his own bed. Sunlight streamed through the window, drawing bright lines across the walls. The door to his room was open. Mom and Dad stood in the doorway. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Mom said with a smile. "How did you sleep?" Dad asked. Elliot stretched and sat up in bed. For a moment, he looked at them as if he were still deciding whether the dream had really ended. "Great," he said at last. "Really great." Mom sat down beside him. "Did you dream about anything?" she asked. Elliot smiled widely. "Lots of things," he said. "I flew through space. I played. I built things. And I had the best bed in the world right in the middle of my dream." Dad raised his eyebrows. "That sounds pretty good," he said with a quiet laugh. Elliot nodded seriously. "You know what?" he said. "You can play in dreams too. A lot, actually. And sleeping is great because that's how you get to have adventures like that." Mom looked at Dad and smiled knowingly. "That's good," Mom said, "because tonight it will be bedtime again." Elliot hugged his blanket close. "I'm not scared anymore," he said, "because I know the dreams are waiting." Outside the window, the day was fully waking up, and Elliot knew one thing for sure. Sometimes the very best adventures begin when you close your eyes. And so, the nighttime dream adventure comes to an end. The world of dreams grows quiet, and the night slowly makes room for morning light. If you are listening as you drift toward sleep, let your thoughts float gently away. You don't need to do anything now. Sleep knows how to find you. And if you are already dreaming, may your dreams be soft, colorful, and filled with gentle adventures. Good night.